As Margie mentioned, the White House is committed that federal management going forward is going to be built on the data structure that was established under the Data Act. Now, that's very important because the Data Act created the first ever government-wide data structure, the only one that exists. Under that data structure, we have a standard way of reporting the way the federal government spends taxpayers' money. But that's not where it's going to end. That data structure is going to bring together more information than just federal spending in the future, and it's going to become the centerpiece of federal management. I'm not going to give away any more because we have the people who are doing it up here on the stage. In order to introduce them, I would like to ask you to help me welcome from Carney & Company, one of our sponsors today, Eileen Coble. Come on, Eileen.
Thank you very much. I want to say thanks and welcome to our session on the government data demo, the DAIMS in action. Carney is very pleased to support this 5th annual transparency conference, and also we're very pleased to participate in working with Treasury in achieving their objectives for data transparency. I'm going to do a quick introduction of our panel because we want to go right into the demo. Ms. Amy Edwards is a senior advisor for fiscal transparency, Office of the Fiscal Assistant Secretary, U.S. Treasury. Amy has been involved in this from the very inception all the way through today. Justin Marsico is a senior policy analyst for the Bureau of Fiscal Service, U.S. Treasury, and he is leading a data analytics team. Amy's going to open with some introductory remarks, and then we'll transition over to Justin, and then if we have time, we'll take some questions. Thank you very much.
But first, we're going to try to get this machine working here.
Great. Well, thank you. And again, Amy Edwards with Treasury. I'm really happy to be with you this morning because today is a really exciting day. I know many of you have been with us on the Data Act journey for many years, and so much hard work, so much effort, so much across the entire federal government to get to a place where today we can actually look at the real data that we've collected through the Data Act implementation and show you some of the possibilities of what this data can do, how it can be used to create value both inside the government and I believe outside the government. So I want to start I know if you're a regular participant in the Data Foundation or Data Coalition, you know a lot about the Data Act, but maybe there's some people here who don't know some of the basics. So I'm going to start by talking about the requirements of the Data Act really briefly. This is just a snapshot of what we were trying to achieve when we started this journey back in 2014, which was to really track about $4 trillion of annual government federal spending on a quarterly basis and combine data from a lot of different systems across the government. Margie was just talking about unlocking the data that's across the federal enterprise, and that's exactly what we were trying to do with the Data Act, is unlock that data that resided in the budget, accounting, procurement, and financial assistance areas, and bring it all together in a common standard and common format so that we could provide it to the public in an easy, clear way. So that was our big challenge. The challenge is also to collect 400 data elements from about 100 agencies and display it all for the public. I think another challenge worth noting is some of the data quality challenges that we have and some of the ongoing commitment that we have to try to improve that data. We've just started our first reporting back in May of 2017. We launched the first quarter of reporting from the whole government. We had another quarter released in August. In each quarter, we're seeing improvements and we're getting better, and it's becoming more of a routine, and we're reviewing the data, and we can notice things that should be tweaked or revised. So we're continuing to work on the data quality and to make sure that it has, if the data's higher quality, it has more value. So we really want to continue to make that a priority at Treasury, working with all the agencies. So The most important part of the Data Act is really the DAIMS, and I think others have mentioned this morning. The Data Act Information Model Schema includes some key components, just as we set the stage for the demo that Justin's going to provide for you all. We have 24 elements in the DAIMS coming from the budget area. We have 48 elements coming from the accounting area, so those are things like, budgetary balances, obligations, outlays, those kinds of things. And then the bulk of the data is coming from the awards themselves. We have 272 data elements coming from the procurement sub-award areas, and we have 62 data elements that are within the grants or financial assistance areas. So I think this is, good backdrop for what we're going to talk about today. So I think there's been a lot of talk about data standards and the power and the potential that we have across the federal government to expand and build off of the work that we've done with the Data Act. And this visual shows some of those components. So we show in here the domains that are there. I think our goal with this vision is to really focus on the accuracy, the adaptability, the completeness, and the ease of use. And I think this model and vision for connecting, all the different areas, both federal government and internationally and state and local government, really shows some value and potential that we really want to build off on the future. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Justin, and he's going to talk about our data analytics strategy and how we hope to get people to use the data and get the data moving. So Justin, it's up to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Amy. So I'm Justin. I work with our analytics team at the Fiscal Service, and our big goal is to get this data moving. We want people to be using federal financial data to understand the programs and operations of the federal government, but also to solve problems and to answer questions that they have about federal spending. And right now we have a pretty great and powerful website that we've been building over the last couple of years, which anyone can go to at beta.usaspending.gov, where you can explore our data, search and filter and drill down and really get a sense of some of those domains that Amy was talking about and get a breadth of the data that's there. So we have data on all of the federal accounts that are reported to us, some descriptive characteristics about spending against those accounts, and then contract and grant awards that are related to those accounts. And it's really a lot of power that you can get just in looking at the data and searching and filtering. But there are a lot of analyses that you can't do just by searching and filtering the data. And that's really the goal of our analytics team, is to identify those interesting use cases, to partner with other organizations who are interested in doing analysis, and to prove that using federal financial data is a valuable activity. So the strategy that we've taken is in three parts. We've been partnering with agencies, federal agencies, to get them using the data so they can understand the possibility and also how to use and access it, partnering with states, and providing resources to the public. And just to give you a sense of some of the work we've been doing over the last 8 months since we stood up this team, we had a really interesting project where we worked with the Small Business Administration to help visualize the distribution of their loan portfolio to show how it impacts local communities. That was one of our partnerships with agencies. We've been working with the state of Connecticut. There's a good amount of federal funding that goes to the state, so it gets sent to Hartford. And then from our Data Act data, that's the end of the road. We don't know what happens to it beyond that, but we've been trying to match our data with Connecticut's data from their financial system to get a better sense of who the communities that are being impacted by that federal spending. So that's a project we've been working on that's a partnership with states. And the last thing that we're focused on is providing resources for the public. Actually, the text of the Data Act legislation says that one of the purposes of the law is to help make the programs and operations of the federal government more transparent for the taxpayer. So we've really taken that to heart in thinking about analyses that we can come up with and visualizations that we can provide to the public. So earlier this morning, we launched an alpha version of an analytics page. I'm excited to let all of you know. It's currently on our GitHub site. We have a Data Act GitHub site, but our long-term plan is to move it over into our usaspending.gov environment. And right now on our analytics page, we have 4 tools that we've developed that I'm going to show you in a second that we're pretty excited about. And we've imagined the analytics page, which we're calling the Data Lab, as a place where researchers and federal agencies and members of the public can come and see our analyses and work with our visualizations, but also just get a sense of the possible in using federal financial data, and then take our code and kind of run with it to do their own work. So I'm going to do a live demo of this, of our website right here, if you just give me 1 second. All right, so, okay, good, screens look good. So this is our Data Lab webpage. The URL for it, you can see up in the bar, is fedspendingtransparency.github.io. And if you actually navigate to that website, you can see we have a little tab here for the Data Lab. So the first visualization that I want to show you is something we call federal spending accounts. So I mentioned before that we have, the Data Act has federal agencies report information on all of their spending accounts to us, and we have them in our database, and you can go and access them right now. But one of the hurdles that we recognized is that this is a lot of information, and it's kind of technical in nature, and it's hard to show over 1,700 accounts on one web page in a way that's easy for people to interact with, and especially if they don't know what they're looking for. So we thought that we would create an analysis that we call, or it's called a dendrogram, which basically means a family tree, where we organize all of the federal accounts that are reported to us by agency and sub-agency. So this is what you see when you come to this analysis. We give you an initial view of the 24 CFO Act agencies, which are the largest agencies in government and represent over 98% of federal spending. And if you're interested in a particular agency, you can click on it and see the subcomponent parts of the agency. So I clicked on the Department of Commerce, and now I'm clicking on NOAA. And you can see all of the federal accounts that are associated with NOAA. And we've mapped the balance of obligations as of the end of the third quarter, right after the account name, so you can get a sense of what the largest accounts are within NOAA. So you can see the largest account for NOAA is its ORF account for Operations, Research, and Facilities, and they've obligated a little over $2 billion out of that account. And if you're interested in looking at another agency, I'm going to pick the Department of the Interior. Here's the Park Service. You can see there are a good number of accounts associated with the Park Service, the largest of which is the operation of the National Park Service system. And if you click on this account, it takes you to the web page within our beta.usaspending.gov environment that provides more details about this account. So on this web page, you can see new appropriations in this account this fiscal year, as well as the carryover balance, and then you can see the obligations incurred on that account as of the end of Q3. And you can, this is an interesting page if you haven't seen it. We love showing it and talking about it. If you scroll down this page, you can see the breakdown of spending activity in this account by program, by object class, and if there are any awards associated with that account, you can see them in the final table below. So I just want to show you one more thing that I think is interesting about this visualization before we move on. So I mentioned that we rolled up the remainder of the non-CFO Act agencies into this final bullet. I'm going to expand this so you get a sense of the breadth of agencies that are providing data to us in the Data Act, so you can get a sense of the scale here of the federal government and the coordination that's been required to get all this data submitted in a uniform manner. So the last one there, United States Interagency Council on Homelessness. So that's our first visualization showing you federal accounts. The next one I want to show is an analysis that also uses federal accounts data, but it begins to bring in some of the descriptive information about spending that's been going on in those accounts. So we have a taxonomy within our data that's called object class. And for those of you who are not familiar with the object class taxonomy, this basically describes what the government gets when it purchases something, or what the public receives when it purchases something. These are categories like labor of federal employees, labor of contractors, rent for buildings, printing and supplies. And we have information on all of these different categories for all of the different accounts that are reported to us. So what we did here is we rolled up all those accounts into the highest level categorization that we have, a system called budget function. Budget function is a level higher than federal agency. It describes at a very high level the mission that's being carried out, or the purpose of a federal program. And you can get a sense by just reading the titles on the left side of the screen, the level that a budget function exists at. So we have national defense, health, net interest, Medicare. And what we're doing in this analysis, which is called Sankey, is we're showing for each budget function, for each mission area of the federal government, what does the spending profile look like? So when you hover over national defense, and then you take a look at the panel that's popping up on the right-hand side of the screen, the question that we're trying to answer is, when the government is pursuing national defense, what does the spending profile look like? And the answer is, the top thing that the government does with federal funds when pursuing national defense is pay salaries to civilian and military employees. You can see there's a total of around $500 billion through Q3, and the largest category is for personnel compensation and benefits. And the next largest category is the labor of contractors. So you can get like a general sense of that budget function. And then if you look at another budget function, Social Security, it's a completely different picture. Almost all of the spending activity is related to insurance claims. So this is like money that's basically almost entirely going directly back to the public with a small amount of overhead. So those are some kind of obvious things that you might already know in approaching this analysis. There are a few things that I find interesting if you look at some of these smaller ones. So transportation, the largest category of spending within transportation is grants, subsidies, and contributions, which makes sense if you know the business model of the Department of Transportation and giving money for federal highways. The second largest is personnel compensation and benefits. And the reason for that is that this transportation category is a higher level summarization than federal agencies. So it also includes the TSA, which has a lot of labor costs, or is mostly labor costs, as well as the Coast Guard. So that's why that second category is popping up so high. All right, so I'm going to move on and show you our next visualization. So we looked at two visualizations that look at federal spending based on the spending accounts that we have reported to us. We also have information about contract and grant awards. So this is a visualization that explores some of our contract data. And like with the dendrogram, here we were trying to solve the problem of there being a lot of information. There are a lot of federal contracts that exist and that are reported to us. So we designed a visualization that's called a sunburst that helps you to explore some contract information. So what this sunburst represents is this inner ring is showing you the federal agency that has awarded the contracts. The second ring is showing you the sub-agency. So I've hovered over from HHS to the Centers for Disease Control. And then the outer ring shows you the contractors who have been awarded contracts by that agency. So if you go around the ring here, you can see HHS, Veterans Affairs, NASA, Energy, DHS. And for those of you who are wondering where the Department of Defense is in this visualization, the Department of Defense is still working on submitting their contract data to us. So we actually don't have a direct submission from them yet, which is why it's not popping up as the largest agency here. We do have spending account information from DoD, but not at the award level financial details. So if you click on the agency, now we've zoomed in, so we're just looking at contracts related to HHS, and you can get a sense from HHS. Again, the largest components are CDC, followed by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, and then NIH. And for each of these contractors, what we tried to do here is bring in a taxonomy that's called Product and Service Code, which describes what the purpose of the contract was at a pretty high level. There are many thousands of product and service codes, and to make them more interesting and accessible, we map these with different icons so you can get a sense of what the product and service code means. You can see for the top awards coming out of CDC, they're all related to medical, dental, and veterinary equipment. For Centers for Medicaid, Medicare, you have some IT contracts, and then within NIH, you can see you have administrative support services, lab testing, medical research and development, and professional services. All right, so that's that visualization. I'm gonna move on quickly since we're running a little bit short on time and show you this last visualization that's called the Federal Spending Snapshot. So one of the things that, when we talk about the Data Act, we always talk about the exciting possibility that comes from linking other external data sources into Data Act data, and that's what we're exploring in this visualization. So we found a data set, an open data set that's put out by OPM called FedScope data, and this data set has information on federal employees, their average salaries, the agencies they work for, and their location. And we thought, well, we can match that data to our data because we have data on personnel compensation. So what we did is we drilled into just the personnel compensation category for civilian employees. And then we rolled up all the average salaries from the FedScope data, and we found that there was a pretty good match between the two. So we basically joined them together on the personnel compensation and benefits category. And then we use that as that linkage to explore the FedScope data. So what you're seeing in this top visualization is total government spending at CFO Act agencies for personnel compensation. You can see that here, even though military employees are not included, defense is still a large share. And then you can drill down into the federal agencies in this next category. And then this shows you where federal employees are located throughout the nation. Interestingly, only about a quarter of federal employees are located in the DC, Virginia, and Maryland region. You can see that there's quite a large amount in California and Texas. And then in this last category, we're pulling in information about occupational series, which describes basically what people do. So we have people who are doing medical, hospital, dental, public health related activities, investigative activities, engineering and architecture. And what we're working on right now is the ability to select an agency and to see its individual profile, both in terms of where people live and what their occupational profile looks like for their employees. So that's basically it. I'd encourage all of you to go to our Fed Spending Transparency GitHub site and check out our data lab. For those of you who are analysts, we also have some resources for people who are looking to do analysis, including code that directly connects to our APIs and pulls all the data out, so it'll save you that step. That's right over here. And we're also looking for feedback on our visualizations and new ideas, and you can do that by clicking over here. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. And as you can see, we have a wonderful group of us here who are committed to making sure that everyone can understand and use the data, and developing resources like those we're releasing today on the Data Lab really just are designed to help you explore and understand the data and develop your own use cases for how you can use it, both whether it's in your agency or your organization, or help you understand how to use. All of this data represents about 20% of the US GDP, and we really believe it has such significant value. And the DAIMS is really the enabling force behind all of this. So we really hope that the Data Act Information Model Schema can serve as an example of how we can work towards a more integrative administrative data set across the whole federal government. And one other point I want to talk about, I mean, I think these analytics that we've seen today and the work that we're continuing to do at Treasury with the agencies across government to visualize and explore this data and gain new insights, it's really just the start. And I think we've learned some other valuable aspects about using standardized data and system, structures like the DAIMS. It's allowed us to, we developed our broker, which is the instrument that collects all this data from all the federal agencies across the government. It brings data in from agencies, other systems that are out, government-wide systems where we pull data in and validate all that data. Agencies can certify all that data. And we developed that system in about 6 months. And the real reason that we've been able to work faster and smarter is really based on the DAIMS model. And we just recently, this week, also sunsetted a legacy system, our award submission portal for financial assistance. We sunsetted an old system and developed a new financial assistance broker system into our infrastructure. And we did that in a matter of months this summer. So I think there are so many benefits to using standardized structured data in the way that we have done it with the Data Act and the DAIMS that we're continuing to see benefits from. And so we're really excited about the potential to grow this work and working with the rest of the federal community and the open data movement to really have and tap into the value we have across the government. So thank you for having us here today.
Okay, we have time for 2 questions. Do we have a question? Yes, the person down front.
We don't have a booth here today where we can do that, but actually, if you go back, you can go to beta.usaspending.gov on your own. And that's where you can see all of our new website and the data that's been published since May. So I would encourage you to do that, or you can ask us afterwards if you need some help finding that. Maybe we can pull up one of our laptops and show you if you'd like to see some of the information and help explore the site.
Or maybe someone can put it out on Twitter for them. I think it's the Fed Spending Transparency at GitHub right now.
Yeah, this is a Federal Spending Transparency GitHub, the visualizations today. And then if you want to see the rest of the data on our site is beta.usaspending.gov.
Thank you very much. We have one more question.
Yes, hi, my name is Mike Beckerly. I work for Traces. And my question is real simple. Why do you guys have a different domain than data.gov?
I don't. We've had, we've been posting U.S. spending information as a federal government on usaspending.gov since 2007. And so it's been our longstanding portal and place to go for information on federal spending. And so that is going to continue to be our home for the information that we're sharing, because I think there's been a community that's been developed there, and folks know where to go to find the information. So we've just continued that through this work as well. We just are continuing where we are. We certainly are linked to data.gov and all the other sites that are connected across the federal enterprise around sharing open data. So I'm sure there's ways we can continue to work to be more connected even with our colleagues across government.
Okay. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the session.